편파하고 있고. 안녕하세요. 오랜만에 운동 제대로 해보겠습니다. 오늘 날씨가 날씨 너무 좋네요. 하늘이 너무 파래. 진짜 우리나라 이제 미세먼지만 없으면은 어느 나라나 똑같겠죠. 미세먼지만 없으면은 진짜 하늘이 맑고 좋은데 진짜 6월은 여러분 날씨가 너무 좋네요. 하지만 지금 현재 집안의 실내 온도는 30도라는 거. 일단 창문을 좀 열겠습니다. 선풍기를 틀어놨는데 세탁기도 끝났네. 운동해야 되는데. 날씨 진짜 좋다. 일단은 빨리 팔굽혀펴기 하고 빨래만 널고 다시 돌아오겠습니다. 팔굽혀펴기 10개를 스트레칭을 하고 있어야 되는데 그냥 하도록 하겠습니다. 아. 아이고야. 아, 빨래 널고 왔습니다. 더워, 씨. 자, 다시 운동을 해보겠습니다. 역시 운동할 땐 CNN.
When Hublot smashed into the watch world in 2004, it really left a crater hole that has never quite seen the industry recover. This was such a bold, brash, and incredibly brazen take on watchmaking. The Big Bang was the product that launched this ship with a vengeance. These were big, brash, unapologetic watches with all kinds of riveted bezels and large dimensional pushes on the side. This was a watch that, again, was not steeped in tradition. It was creating an entirely new personality and boldness. All of this was brought to the brand by the new owner, Jean-Claude Biver, one of the most electric, energetic and controversial figures in the watch industry. It's hard to think of any other watch brand that's had that much impact on such a conservative industry.
비싼 건가? 허블라?
Connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
To understand Italy, you need to look at the food. Napoli is a truly thrilling city. People here do things their own way.
He's a philosopher. He's our tradition. Beautiful.
They've given the world its favorite food. Just don't forget where it was invented.
A Napoli. A Napoli. No, a Napoli. A Napoli. A Napoli.
Stanley Tucci searching for Italy. Sunday on CNN.
Under weird Greenland. This is CNN. American impact. We are committed. We have never fully left, but we are reasserting the fact that it's overwhelming the interest of the United States of America to have a great relationship with NATO and with the EU. I have very different views than my predecessor. So I'm looking forward to talking to you all about what we're about to do.
Was President Joe Biden on Tuesday at the European Union in Brussels, where he came there to reaffirm the transatlantic partnership and, of course, America's leadership in that transatlantic partnership. I want to get to Melissa Bell right now, who joins me from Brussels. And Melissa, how important do you think it was for President Biden to come there to that EU meeting and also reaffirm, as he put it, that America is back?
Oh, I think for Europeans it was music to their ears. First of all, I think, Fred, it's important to note that between what happened at NATO on Monday and what happened at the bilateral between the European Union and the United States here yesterday, it was that reaffirmation of the fact that, of course, there can be divisions, there can be disagreements, but compromises can be found, as they were found, for instance, on China. But you're right, I think more fundamentally, it is really those words that Joe Biden spoke here yesterday alongside the European leaders about the phony populism that had emerged, about the need to fight it, about the fact that until a few years ago, the shared values of that transatlantic alliance hadn't been questioned. And now that they had, he was really back to tell Europeans that they shared them once again and were involved in a common fight to defend them. And I think it was an important show of force, especially ahead of what you're covering today.
Thank you very much, Melissa Bell there in Brussels. And the U.S. president plans to address, of course, Russia's aggression against Ukraine in his conversation with Vladimir Putin. President Biden wrote a recent op-ed in the Washington Post saying he won't leave any doubt about the U.S.'s resolve to defend democracy. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, and eastern Ukraine has been locked in a bitter standoff between government forces and Russian-backed separatists for almost the same amount of time. Earlier, I spoke to the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, for his take.
I think Ukraine is going to be a very important topic in the summit. Again, President Biden is going to lay out where the Russians, in particular Mr. Putin, have caused problems. And one of the big problems that they've caused, of course, is when they invaded Ukraine and they tried to illegally annex part of Ukraine, Crimea. So it's clearly going to be an issue. It's as long as the Russians are occupying part of their neighbor, it's going to be very difficult to reestablish any kind of rules of the road, any kind of predictability, any kind of stability that the president has been talking about. So I think Ukraine will be a serious topic, and Ukrainians, of course, are watching this very carefully. They were pleased, I will tell you, that President Biden did call President Zelensky before meeting President Putin later on today.
Oh,
I think one of the interesting things that we've seen in the past, this is, if we look at the basically escalating conflict between the U.S. and Russia, it's essentially been going on since 2012, and in 2014 you had all the events around Ukraine, around Crimea. So far as sanctions have been concerned, other actions have been concerned, it really seems as though Vladimir Putin has been impervious to pressure and has continued to fuel that conflict. Do you think that there's anything that President Biden could do to make Vladimir Putin change course?
Yes, I do. I think there are things that the United States can do, that President Biden can do. And I believe that the sanctions that have been imposed so far for the actions in Ukraine actually have been effective. Since the sanctions were put on, the Russians have not moved further into Ukraine. They've not gone further into Ukraine as people worried they might, because they know that the sanctions can be worse. There are more sanctions that can be imposed on Russia that they're clearly concerned about. That's not the only thing, of course, that the president can do. We can clearly support Ukraine militarily, politically, diplomatically. One thing that might change the Russian attitude toward Ukraine in particular is if the United States were to join those negotiations on how to get sovereignty, how to remove Russians from Donbass and Crimea. If the United States were to join those negotiations, as President Zelensky actually has invited, then that might be a change in the Russian attitude and negotiating posture.
Former Ambassador William Taylor there speaking to me earlier, and coming up on CNN, what the Biden administration has learned from President Trump's last meeting with Vladimir Putin, and what one diplomat who was there has to say about the encounter. This is coming up.
I just thought, let's just cut this off, let's try to end it. But of course I couldn't come up with anything that just wouldn't add to the terrible spectacle.
Often people don't believe that children are aware of problems. Where's the path for children to become a creative change maker? My name is Emer Beamer. I'm the Learning Director and co-founder of Design-a-thon Works. The Design-a-thon program is a combination of design thinking and maker education. They spend a bunch of hours in groups coming up with solutions, and they prototype it. Nearly 100,000 children have done design-a-thons in 40 different countries. We're reframing how society sees the role of the child.
I just miss hugs. You saw me in Colombia getting literally bombarded as hundreds of kids kind of charged me and yelled Tio Andy. I miss that a lot. My name is Andy Stein. I am the founder and executive chairman of the Orphan Starfish Foundation. And our mission is to help the most vulnerable children around the world. Survivors and victims of trafficking, survivors of abuse, orphans, indigenous children, refugees, and at-risk youth. We help over 15,000 children in 29 countries. We provide now 2,000 students and families meals, PPE, necessities around the world. A big problem in one of the homes for survivors of trafficking is basically saying, look, we just feel completely alone in the world. So we came up with a concept called You Are Not Alone. And we started Zoom calls. And what we do is not only would people from Orphan Starfish and the girls get on the calls, but we'd have a celebrity, an artist, a musician, somebody come on and sing to them or perform for them. The beauty of them kind of knowing that the world still cares about them and there's actually celebrities they've seen on TV that care about them was something that was quite uplifting.
To understand Italy, you need to look at the food. Napoli is a truly thrilling city. People here do things their own way.
This is a philosophy. This is our tradition. Beautiful.
They've given the world its favorite food. Just don't forget where it was invented.
A Napoli. A Napoli. No, a Napoli. A Napoli. A Napoli.
Stanley Tucci searching for Italy. Sunday on CNN.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and this is CNN.
Beautiful shot there of the water jet here on Lake Geneva. One of the things I've learned since coming here is never to call that thing a fountain. That is the jet de l'eau, the water jet, as we view Lake Geneva, the venue, of course, for that very historic summit that is set to kick off very, very soon. Now, in several hours, Joe Biden will meet with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, but U.S. officials say they have absolutely no intention of giving him a platform like he had during the 2018 summit with then-President Donald Trump. Of course, that took place in Helsinki. A top Russia advisor to the Trump administration, Fiona Hill, told CNN she was so alarmed during that now infamous press conference that she was even thinking of faking a medical emergency to make it all stop. Listen in.
I first of all, looked around to see if there was a fire alarm, but we were in a rather grand building attached to the presidential palace of the Finnish president, who had lent it to us for the occasion, and I couldn't see anything that resembled a fire alarm. I had exactly the same feeling that Deborah Birx had during the infamous press conference, where there was this suggestion by President Trump about injecting bleach, to counteract the coronavirus. It was one of those moments where it was mortifying, frankly, and humiliating for the country. I just thought, let's just cut this off, let's try to end it. But of course I couldn't come up with anything that just wouldn't add to the terrible spectacle.
Fiona Hill, of course, one of the most knowledgeable people in the world about Russia probably right now at this point in time. She's one of several aides and advisors who have been helping President Biden prepare for the summit with Vladimir Putin. And officials say that U.S. President has been preparing for Vladimir Putin's tactics in an effort to avoid the pitfalls of his predecessors and other world leaders which they have faced. Here's Brian Todd with more details.
Helsinki, July 16, 2018. It was well into their news conference when Vladimir Putin showed just how good he was at playing Donald Trump, gifting the president a custom soccer ball in front of the media.
Mr. President, I'll give this ball to you, and now the ball is in your court.
Thank you very much.
When the ball was in his court, Trump, in the minds of many, dropped it. He inexplicably let Putin off the hook for Russia's 2016 election meddling.
So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
Trump's intelligence leaders had repeatedly told him that Russia had aggressively tried to interfere in the 2016 vote at Putin's direction, but Trump seemed cowed by the former KGB lieutenant colonel.
People came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
That looked pretty awful. And, we could see sort of the master liar next to the spontaneous, not terribly experienced public liar.
Putin used the mind games during these meetings, from his own imposing body language to making his counterpart cringe. In 2007, knowing German Chancellor Angela Merkel was terrified of dogs, Putin brought his huge black Labrador, Connie, into the room. Putin smirked. Merkel put on a brave face.
She did not blink because she understands the Russian mindset. She knows that the Russians, and in this case Vladimir Putin, wanted to play Russian chess with her, which means the person who blinks the first has lost.
President Biden now seems determined not to blink with Vladimir Putin in Geneva. Sources tell CNN Biden has spent long hours, over several days, huddling with his top national security officials and aides in preparation, meeting with Russia experts from think tanks. Experts tell us, however well Biden prepares, Putin will still tweak him.
He's going to try to provoke Biden on the issues that are bedeviling American society, the polarization, the issues of systemic racism, the insurrection in the Capitol on January 6th.
What does Biden need to do to not get knocked off balance by Putin? One expert says, don't back down on the issue of recent cyber attacks blamed on Russia.
The best that President Biden can do is telegraph that he is full of resolve, that his government is resolved to respond if the Russians continue, that there will be consequences.
Biden's dilemma, one analyst told us, is that he's seeking a stable, predictable relationship with the Kremlin so that he can concentrate on countering China. And Vladimir Putin, the analyst said, is determined to be just the opposite of stable and predictable. He'll likely poke and prod Biden and try to create more political division in America for the duration of Biden's term. Brian Todd, CNN, 1.
That more predictable relationship with Russia. Obviously, this summit really has a broad agenda that we've gotten sort of a little bit of an insight to. There's a wide array of topics that these two leaders are set to talk about today. Of course, Ukraine most probably will be on the agenda. Cyber is really one of the big topics where there's large disagreement between the U.S. And Russia. But there are also some areas where some believe that there could be a shared or mutual interest, at least. Neither of these two countries have an interest, for instance, in Afghanistan descending into chaos once those U.S. forces are fully withdrawn. Generally, the Middle East will be a topic. Korean Peninsula will also be a topic as well. The meeting right now is set to last between 4 and 5 hours. However, there is a lot of flexibility also built in case the two leaders do come to some sort of conclusion or feel that they are getting closer to one another's position. They can make this take longer and really take their time to try and hammer out what most certainly would be a defining moment of the relations between the United States and Russia going forward, Rosemary. And of course, we're going to be around here to cover it all, and we're going to keep our eye on it.
Yeah, we know you shall, and we'll be back to you at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Fred. Appreciate it. Well, still to come, China's preparing to return to the final frontier. The country's first manned spaceflight in nearly 5 years is set to launch this week. Why now? Set to launch this week. Why now? Those details in a live report from Beijing. That's next.
It's time for the perfect journey. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Slavery in the 21st century, in a lot of ways, looks a lot like poverty, but with the bottom drop out of it. People being exploited for work without pay, being economically exploited, and in many cases unable to walk away. So that can look like young children picking the sparkles that go into cosmetics. It can look like young fishermen out on boats for 5 years. It's hidden in plain sight. Freedom is an enterprise software that businesses use to trace and track forced labor in their supply chains. The pandemic proved something that we've been seeing for the last 4 years. Supply chains are woefully broken. No one actually knows what they're buying. And when you don't have any insights or understanding of the transparency of your supply chains, it can come back to hurt you in many ways and many times. And we're seeing that both with the pandemic, but we're also seeing that around forced labor. When COVID-19 hit, we all looked at ourselves and said, how can we as a company do more? How can we offer more to society? And what we found is that by looking at shipping records and looking deeper into supply chains, we can give our customers connections deeper to the supply chains where they not only understand where forced labor might be coming from, but they're seeing really key supplier relationships that are going to be important as we continue to fight a pandemic over time.
Another shot.
innovation, technology. New Marketplace Europe.
This month, the luxury industry redefined by technology and sustainability.
Marketplace Europe, Saturday on CNN.
I'm Stanley Tucci. I'm traveling across Italy to discover how the food is as unique as the people and their past.
Stanley Tucci, Searching for Italy.
Well, meet China's newest team of spacefarers. Beijing is sending 3 astronauts up in China's first human space flight in about 5 years. The crew is scheduled to launch Thursday morning, and they will orbit the Earth for a 3-month stay as they work on China's space station. It is the third of nearly a dozen missions needed to get the station complete by 2022. So let's bring in Stephen Jiang. He joins us live from Beijing. Good to see you, Stephen. So what is the significance of the timing of this mission?
Well, Rosemary, this is a major step realizing China's increasingly ambitious space goals. As President Xi Jinping has put it, China will eventually become, quote-unquote, a great power in space. And many would argue they are already a dominating force in space, given this mission actually comes on the heels of 2 recent successful launches of rovers, both to the moon and to Mars. As you mentioned, this mission is the 3rd launch in a series of 11 missions aimed at building the country's first space station. In late April, they have launched the core module of the space station, and a few weeks ago, they launched a cargo spacecraft carrying supplies for the 3 astronauts to dock with that module. And these 3 men, once they're in space, they're going to spend about 3 months there conducting 2 lengthy spacewalks to install equipment on the space station. Now, all these men are veterans in China's space program, and one of the main reasons they're building their own space station, of course, is they have long been excluded from the International Space Station because in 2011, the US Congress actually passed a law to ban NASA from cooperating with the Chinese out of national security concerns, because critics have long linked China's space program to its rising military ambitions. And indeed, when you look at these 3 astronauts, they're all officers and pilots from the People's Liberation Army, and the commander, Nie Haisheng, actually holds the rank of a major general. But interestingly, Rosemary, we have interviewed him back in 2015. He said one of his favorite movies was Gravity, and in that movie, the American astronaut was actually saved actually by the Chinese. But given the rising tensions, that probably could only exist in Hollywood movies now. Rosemary?
Appears that way. Stephen Jiang joining us live from Beijing. Many thanks. And thank you for joining us. I'm Rosemary Church. Up next, Brett Pleiken is live in Geneva with special coverage of the summit between the US and Russian presidents, due to begin in less than 3.5 hours from now. We're back in just a moment.
To understand Italy, you need to look at the food, the glorious food. Come with me as I taste the flavors of the land and sea to discover what the food tells us about the past and the present.
A CNN original series, Stanley Tucci, Searching for Italy, premieres Sunday on CNN.
And this is CNN.
The Royal Oak by Audemars Piguet is the world's first stainless steel luxury sports watch.
Famous watch designer Gerald Genta drew inspiration from a deep sea diver's helmet, which had an octagonal shape as well as riveted screws around the design.
It sold for around $3,000 when it was first released in 1972, and you know, this was considered both by the industry and by the general watch buying public as just a piece of inexplicable insanity. You know, you just didn't charge that for a stainless steel watch. And not only did they not go out of business, it has gone on to become the single most important watch commercially and aesthetically for Audemars Piguet. They're avidly collected. Yeah, they are icons of modern watch design. It's gone on to become one of the most successful wristwatches of all time.
I'm Dust Gold in Jerusalem, and this is CNN.
Hello and welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. My name is Fred Pleitgen. I'm coming to you live from our set in Geneva in Switzerland with CNN's special coverage of the historic summit between President Joe Biden and Russian leader Vladimir Putin. And we are just a few hours away from the highly anticipated meeting between the U.S. and Russian presidents, one of the most crucial in recent times. Relations between the two nuclear powers have plunged to a new Cold War era low in the past couple of years, and this is a big opportunity to cool down the tone and make some progress on common interests, if progress could indeed be made. Now, Vladimir Putin is expected to arrive here in Geneva in about 2 hours, maybe a little more, and he will head straight to the lakeside Villa Lagrange. He is set to arrive there before President Biden. Ahead of the summit, we've seen these adversaries take a couple of swipes at each other. Mr. Biden did not back down, calling his Russian counterpart a killer, and Mr. Putin went out of his way to praise former President Donald Trump. Now, President Biden has just wrapped up meetings with NATO, the EU, and the G7, and they are part of a concerted effort to shore up Western support ahead of this summit. Our own Phil Mattingly has more.
Simple publicly and privately that America is back, and which is why we're here in full force.
President Biden capping off a week designed to reinvigorate America's closest alliances, delivering a resolute message.
Europe is our natural partner, and the reason is we're committed to the same democratic worldviews and they are increasingly under attack.
A message repeated directly in nearly 24 conversations with key U.S. allies in the G7, NATO, and today, the EU. One carefully calibrated to be carried into the highest stakes moment of his first foreign trip, the sit-down with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
That's how we'll prove that democracy and that our alliance can still prevail against the challenges of our time and deliver for the needs of our people.
Biden arriving in Geneva for that sit-down with relations between the U.S. and Russia at their lowest point since the Cold War. The two leaders set to participate in at least 2 meetings. A smaller sit-down, Biden, Putin, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov participating, followed by an expanded discussion with 5-member delegations. The two leaders will not share a meal, officials say, and the talks are expected to last roughly 4 to 5 hours. The day will close with individual press conferences by each leader, an intentional decision by U.S. officials in an effort not to elevate the Russian leader. The U.S. agenda is lengthy, and it will be delivered with clear intent, officials say, from firm warnings on cyber attacks, the imprisonment of opposition leaders, and aggression in Ukraine, to areas of potential cooperation, like Afghanistan, arms control, and the Iran nuclear deal.
I'm going to make clear to President Putin that there are areas where we can't cooperate if he chooses. And if he chooses not to cooperate and acts in a way that he has in the past relative to cybersecurity and some other activities, then we will respond.
But even those areas of potential cooperation will come with significant skepticism from the U.S. side.
I'd verify first and then trust.
Even as Biden signals a grudging respect for what Putin a leader who has confounded U.S. officials for decades, will bring to the room.
He's bright, he's tough, and I have found that he is a worthy adversary.
And it's worth noting that even though the two teams, U.S. officials, Russian officials, have been in intense negotiations over the course of several weeks about how this sit-down would actually be structured, two senior administration officials say both sides agreed to kind of include some flexibility in terms of how the schedule will play out. Now, what does that actually mean? It could mean the two leaders may consider having a one-on-one meeting at some point. It doesn't mean it necessarily will, but the administration officials making clear they want the two leaders to gauge how the entire process will and should go based on the substance of their conversations, based on progress or lack thereof that is occurring at the time. It's just something to keep in mind. To some degree, they understand that yes, there are two meetings set on the books. Yes, they think it'll be 4 to 5 hours. But once the two leaders get in the room, if things are going well, if they believe there's an opportunity to delve deeper into a particular subject area, there's a very real possibility things may move in a different direction. It is, in fact, real-time diplomacy at work. Phil Madden, CNN, Geneva.
And both leaders have said that they want more predictable, more stable relations with one another, and wait and see whether or not they can actually achieve that at this meeting. I want to bring in our own White House reporter, Natasha Bertrand, who has a lot of insight into how President Biden has been preparing for the summit. Natasha, we talked about it a little bit in the last hour. But what do you think that President Biden's view is of Vladimir Putin and what he's going to face from the Russian leaders today?
Yeah, so this is not the first time that President Biden has met with Vladimir Putin. He met with him while he was vice president in 2011, and he really likes to tell aides the story of how he looked at President Putin and he told him directly, look, I want to have a soul. And that, of course, is on what George W. Bush had said to Vladimir Putin 2 decades earlier, saying that he looked into his eyes and he saw his soul. Well, President Biden does not believe that he has a soul. He really likes telling aides that he feels like he can read Vladimir Putin. He also likes to tell aides that he believes that Vladimir Putin responds to signs of strength, and that is why he will be going into this summit very clear-eyed and being very frank with the Russian leader about what the U.S. expectations are for the U.S.-Russia relationship. Now, he's been preparing extensively, as we mentioned, for this summit. He's been meeting with top Russia experts, with his Secretary of State Antony Blinken, with the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. But ultimately, Biden believes that Putin is a rational actor. That is according to several aides, current and former officials who have worked with him on foreign policy issues, particularly Russia, extensively. He believes that Putin will act in his best interest, in the best interest of his country, and whether that means cooperating further with the U.S. remains to be seen. Obviously, that is going to be a big point of discussion here at the summit, is where they can work together on certain issues, on certain narrow issues, for example, in the Middle East, on the Iran nuclear deal, on climate change, and whether they can come to some sort of agreement on the best way forward for the relationship writ large. The president, of course, feels like he is able to speak very bluntly to Vladimir Putin. He says that he will not back down, but of course, he also knows that Putin is susceptible to flattery. So I think we will see a mix here in approaches by President Biden.
Thank you for that. And Natasha, of course, we'll be getting a lot more reports from you today as this day and, of course, as this summit unfolds as well. I want to turn now to my next guest, and it's Luke Harding, who is the author of Collusion, Secret Meetings, Dirty Money, and How Russia Helped Donald Trump Win. He is, of course, also a foreign correspondent with The Guardian. He joins me now from London. Luke, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I don't know if you had the chance to listen to Natasha there, who said that President Biden believes that Vladimir Putin is a rational actor. But the big question is what exactly the rationale is. What is Vladimir Putin willing to negotiate on? And I want to turn specifically to the cybersphere, because it seems as though with some of the cyber attacks that have been going on, the disinformation campaigns that have been going on, it really seems as though Vladimir Putin views the cybersphere as sort of an equalizing factor for Russia when they are economically really and militarily in many ways inferior to the West.
Yeah, I mean, Fred, I think that goes to the heart of the challenge that Russia poses to the international community. If you cast your mind back to the Cold War, then it was tanks facing off in Europe, in West Germany, and so on. And I think really what Putin realizes is actually the new war is the war for the mind. It's the war for informational space. And we've seen a series of really quite devastating attacks by Moscow against America and its allies, including, of course, the spectacular operation to help Donald Trump win in 2016, which you mentioned, and most recently the SolarWinds hack last year. And my sense is actually, regardless of the outcome of the summit, and expectations are extremely low, I don't see the Kremlin stopping this. It's cheap, it's deniable, it discomforts the main adversary, which is the way that Russia still views the United States. And unless there are really hard consequences spelt out by Joe Biden today, I think this kind of stuff will continue.
It's been so interesting because, of course, the Russians have said that they want an initiative together with the U.S. to work in cyberspace to fight against cyber criminals. So you think that's all talk?
I mean, I think it's all talk. I mean, I wrote a previous book called Matthew State, and it's clear that actually the state, the government, the bureaucracy, and organized crime are basically the same quasi-criminal organization. If Putin wanted to rein in domestic cyber criminals, he could do it in a phone call, and of course he chooses not to do it because